the objectives of today is to examine the organisational approach to engaging employers in T-levels and in particular the industry placements, to gather some top tips for different activities to carry out through the process, and we will talk about various different stages of the industry placement, to benefit from the experience of a Wave One provider, and to gain insight from an employer who is currently working with providers and T-level students. So we're going to start off with Richard Patient, who's from the Association of Colleges, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the T-level planner. We have Lara Franklin. We're delighted to welcome Lara, who is giving an employer engagement from a provider's point of view. We've got Alex Charlesworth, who is from our industry placement team. So he's got some top tips for providers. And we welcome Rachel Doherty, who is the employer. So she's going to talk about industry placement and employer engagement from an employer's, that's quite hard to say, from an employer's point of view. Okay, so first of all, I will hand over to Mr. Richard Patient.
Sarah, can you stop sharing your screen?
Yeah. No.
That's still being shared.
There?
That's better.
Okay.
Right, thanks, Sarah. So yes, this is a very short presentation about the T-level planning tool. And it's really aimed at those of you who haven't used the T-level planner, just so you understand what it is and what it can do for you. So why do you need the T-level planner? So the T-level planner was developed with the help of the first T-level providers. And as a result, it covers all of the areas that you need to consider. So they were able to tell us all of the things that they found useful when they were planning their own T-levels. And we've captured that in the T-level planner. So that saves you having to kind of think about what you need to do. And you know that everything you have to do is kind of covered by the planner. Also, throughout the planner, there are links to all of the resources that you need to help you. So each section has information buttons, which when you click on them, they open up, and there are web links to extra information that will help you to actually develop your plans. And of course, being a planner, it allows you to keep a record of exactly where you are today. So you can record, your current position, and obviously based upon that, you can then think about what you need to do next and keep a record of that as well. And you don't have to just be the only person who's using the plan. You can share it with your colleagues, so they're able to take ownership of different parts of the plan and do their own planning. And also, you're able to share the plan with your T-level advisor. And this is really helpful for the T-level advisor, because by being able to access the plan before they have a meeting with you, they're able to see where you are, see what you're thinking about doing next, and also perhaps any issues that you might have, and then they can better prepare their conversation with you. And rather than kind of getting you to say where you are, they can actually focus the conversation and give you more assistance as well. Okay, so you might be a bit concerned, perhaps you're planning, 3 different T-levels, perhaps you're planning a transition program as well. Is the planning tool going to be able to help you? So yes, the answer is yes. So you can create as many plans as you want within the tool. We recommend creating one sort of overarching management plan, which covers all the things you do. So it covers perhaps the marketing that we're going to do for your T-levels, for example. And then you can create individual T-level route plans, which you can use for each curriculum route. The nice thing is that the plan has been updated, so all the plans you create today will also be transition program ready. So each section has a transition program set of questions at the end. So even if you're not planning to do your transition program yet, it will be there in place for when you do. As I said, you don't have to run the plan yourself, so you can share the plan with your curriculum team, so they're able to manage their own T-level curriculum plan, and you can then get perhaps oversight of where they are with their plans. And in fact, you can control who has access to which part of the plan. So, for example, if the business team don't want to share their curriculum plan with the health team, then that's possible. Similarly, if you want everyone to be able to see all the plans, you can do that as well. And you can control whether people are able just to read the plan or whether they can also make changes to the plan and edit it. Also, I know that many organisations don't allow people to install software on their computers for security reasons, or maybe you're concerned that it will take a long time to learn to use the planner. So first of all, there's no installation required. The planner is web-based and is also very secure. It's been tested for security. So you just need a web browser to be able to access the planner. We've also produced video guides and written guides on how to use the planner. So you should be able to set up the plan in minutes. If you do need assistance, then we're more than happy to help. There's also technical support available. So when you're using the planner, in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a chat function. So during normal working hours, you can actually ask technical questions and get a response within a few minutes. And they're able to get you working for technical issues. If you have less technical questions, then do contact your AOC advisor. So we've all been able to kind of use the plan and get familiar with it. So we're able to help you with your plan if you have problems. So hopefully I've managed to persuade you that this is a really good thing to take advantage of. So there must be a catch. Well, no, there isn't a catch. The planner is free to you. It has been funded by the Department for Education. So there's no cost involved and you can use it freely. Also, you can get started with the planner today. So all you need to do to gain access to the planner is to send me your name, your email address, and also the school or college that you are representing. And you can do that in the chat function. If you don't want to share it in the chat, to everyone, then just send me a message in the chat. Or if you prefer, you can send me an email to richard.patient@aoc.co.uk. So anyone who sends me an email or sends me their details in the chat, I guarantee that I'll set up an account for you before the end of the day, and you'll be able to make use of the planner. Well, not immediately, because also you're here for the webinar, but as soon as the webinar's finished, you will be able to gain access to the planner. So yeah, don't hesitate to send a message to me either in the chat or via email. Okay, well, thanks very much for listening to me. I now have the pleasure of passing you over to Lara Franklin from Suffolk New College. And if you do have any questions for Lara, do put them in the chat and we'll be able to ask the questions at the end of her presentation. So I'll pass you over to Lara.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully you can all see my screen. Thank you very much for having me here today. Obviously, I am here to talk about our experiences with having industry placements and the process that we've been through, and I suppose most importantly, probably the lessons that we've learned along the way, and kind of some of the stumbling blocks that we've had, but also some of the successes that we've had. So just to start off a little bit about me. So I am based at Suffolk New College. So we're an FE provider in Ipswich. We are based primarily in Ipswich, but we have got 4 campuses throughout Suffolk. I myself, I come from an industry background, so I I'm very much from the health and science route. I have previously worked as a physiotherapist, and I still keep my hand in and currently work in industry as well. So I'm a physiotherapist by trade. Additionally, throughout the college, we've got teacher development coaches. So I am the teacher development coach. I support new teams in developing their T-levels, and I'm kind of the point to go to if anyone's got any queries within the college. I'm the lead tutor for our T-level health programme, which we've got up and running, and also I teach on the health and social care and health studies BTEC. So my presentation today is primarily going to be focused around talking about health and science industry placements. However, as a college, we do offer T-levels in design, surveying and planning, education and childcare, digital production, design and development, and also accounting at the moment. So my presentation today is to hopefully give an honest overview of experiences in developing industry placements and our relationships. I'm sure everyone here has heard stories regarding placements and T-levels and some of the challenges that have occurred, and I fully understand and appreciate that different regions of the county of different country, have got different challenges when working to establish relationships. I know just within Suffolk, depending on where you are in Suffolk, it presents different challenges with different NHS partnerships and groups. So I am well aware that what I say here for myself may not be as easy or the case for the region of the country that you're in. But additionally, hopefully I can share some ideas in terms of some of the partnerships that we've developed as other alternative routes for placements for our learners. So we are very fortunate to have a good partnership with East Suffolk and North Essex Foundation Trust. So for the health T-level and for our science T-level, this organisation is the primary provider for our placements. We've also got a new relationship that we are building with Cambridge University Hospitals Trust. We work closely with an organisation called Healthcare Homes, who supply a lot of nursing care. We deliver the therapies T-level in our health programmes. So we partnered with a school for children with additional needs, and they've got a large therapy teams that we are working with. We work very closely with a company called Care Development East. So the aim of this company is to try and fill in the gaps in the health and care industry. So basically, Care Development East have lots of opportunities for placements for our students. They've got lots of contacts, and additionally, they've got lots of ambassadors who are very open to coming in and talking to our students and sharing their experiences and their journeys. Additionally, part of the Suffolk and North Essex Foundation Trust, they have a department that's called Talent for Care. And basically they have been helping us and supporting us with getting our students placements in different areas of the hospital, and this has ranged from being in the labs for science to being out on the wards or being out in outpatient departments. And we work closely with the University of Suffolk, again, primarily for our science placements. And again, linked in with the Cambridge University Hospitals Trust, the integrated care system, we are starting to work with in order to develop maternity support services. So when we're looking to run our midwifery T-level, they hopefully are going to be able to support us with those. So we've started developing a close relationship with them. And then very finally at the bottom of this page, a new organisation that we have started getting a working relationship with is a company called Omega Ingredients. So this is a lab-based company in which they are looking at natural ingredients and additives for food. So it's very much based upon placing our lab science students in there. So with regards to our placements, I'm going to focus on how we established our link with the Suffolk and North Essex Foundation Trust, or ESNEFT, as, like I said, they are our primary source of placements. So when we were thinking about T-levels, we, like a few different organisations, were fortunate to have a budget in order to build a new building. And we wanted to get input from the NHS as to what this new building should look like, what would we need within there in order to hopefully develop the workforce for the future. So at that point, we established contact with a Director of Education and Innovation at ESNEFT. So this is a little bit where a lack of consistency within the NHS can tie in, because speaking to colleagues who are based in North Suffolk, they approached their NHS trust looking for the Director of Education, and the NHS trust there didn't have a Director of Education. So for them, they were having to look for a different route into the organisation. And through discussion with the Director of Education, it came to a good understanding that what we were doing was training, providing their future workforce. So they were extremely open to having input from ourselves and from them to come and help support us in delivering our programs. At the moment, like many regions within the NHS, there's a big demand for staff and for a workforce. So they were very keen to and were able to realise that actually what we were doing was hopefully going to apply their future workforce with staff, and they wanted to be able to start their input and training from a young age. So through the Director of Education, we now speak and meet regularly with our Head of Education at ESNEFT and ambassadors from the Trust to understand what their requirements for the future workforce is, and through that they help support informing our curriculum. We have ambassadors from ESNEFT come in very regularly to oversee the programme. They sit in with teaching, they speak to our students, and they go out when our students are out in the hospital and on wards to go and speak with our learners and make sure they're getting everything that they can out of their experiences. And following our communication through the Head of Education and Talent for Care, we developed a MOU, so Memorandum of Understanding, with ESNEFT, in that they would support us in supplying placements, they would help support inform our curriculum, and they would be able to help in terms of training and teaching and providing experiences for our learners. So we are extremely fortunate with our relationship. So as part of our link with ESNEFT, we have got placements for a large number of our students. So our students go out in different cohorts and at about one time they will have between 15 to 20 students of ours placed throughout 2 different hospitals. ESNEFT inform our curriculum, and they've given us sets of occupational standards to work towards and ensure our students are adhering to. We have also got links with what are known as our practice education facilitators. So these are our on the floor nurses, AHPs, midwives who support the training development of the staff within the NHS. So we've now got direct links with the PEF facilitators who are working with our students. So we have very regular communication with them. We, as part of our relationship, the ESNEFT have provided us, we're fortunate to have £50,000 of kits provided for our new build from them. So they brought us a series of simulation kits involving VR headsets. We've got large screen TVs to be mounted onto our virtual wards, and a Oxford Medical Solutions package, so our students can learn by experiencing with these VR kits. And in return, we are now also running a short 12-week adult course for ESNEFT, which provides a direct entry into the workforce. So we are supporting in developing individuals who are going into kind of those HCA roles. I think probably for the key points to take away is, first of all, it is really hard work establishing relationships. It takes a huge amount of our time, our energy, our effort, and there's been a lot of frustration in developing the links. We have had issues that have arisen from our students not turning up on placement, which doesn't look great for us, to placements not quite appreciating the level our students are. So something that we've definitely learned is that we may well be speaking to the practice education facilitators and the head of education, but at times the purpose of our students' presence on the wards and in outpatient clinics potentially hasn't filtered down. So we have had students turn up and ward staff have the expectation that they are university nursing students and the university therapy students. So we've had challenges where we've had to have communication quite immediately and quickly to try and make sure that we're changing that. However, fortunately for us, we have got a very open relationship with ESNEFT, so we've got that ability to communicate quickly, and they're very receptive to feedback, like we are. A few things that potentially hit us a little bit when we were planning and also budgeting for our year is that all our learners that go out into the hospital have to have an occupational health check. So that ESNEFT charges £28 per learner. And then on top of that, they are required to have vaccinations. So if they've got to have their Hep B, they've got to have their COVID vaccinations, and they've got to have their childhood vaccinations. So that is something that is a requirement for them before they go into hospital. And they expect our learners to be there to be on shift. So our learners have to start at 7 AM, which quite a few of them are not too pleased about. However, those that want to be there are there and they turn up. We do have learners that are leaving the house at 5 AM to get to the hospital at 7. So this is training our learners and getting them used to kind of what the future workforce will be like. It is a little bit cliche, but make sure you think about outside the box in terms of placement. So for our therapies, we were looking at schools with additional needs. We have head injury clinics that run vicinity to our college, so students have been in there to get experience from kind of multidisciplinary working. As a college, we don't have placement coordinators, so absolutely everything is done by ourselves. So that goes from establishing the relationships, working on the MOUs, having the communication with our placements, doing every single learner's DBS checks, and that's all been done by us. So as you can imagine, it takes a huge amount of time, and in a way, whilst it is time consuming, it has allowed us as tutors and as programme leads to be able to have actually that immediate and that direct relationship with the staff at each placement. So we're able to very easily communicate what our learners need, and they can immediately feed back to us. And just ensure that there are clear expectations set out from the start, so what they expect from us and what we expect from them. And I would encourage you to, if you're having difficulties getting into NHS trusts, to look at links with practice education facilitators, because that is something which is common ground within every NHS trust. And as a result of kind of what we've learned this year, we are now starting to run a placement readiness programme. So this is a 6-week course that all our learners are going to undergo before going out on placement. So this has been informed by our placement providers. This is setting out the expectations for all our learners, ensuring they know the kind of professional standards and behaviours that are expected. And we're going to have the SNF run a day's training about things like infection control. They do a day of basic life support and manual handling. So this is all getting them prepared to be out and about on placement. And we have, like I said, regular ties with our placement providers. So we have a Suffolk New College Health and Social Care Board network. So we have a network meeting that runs once a term. SNF come and they run a careers fair from our college. We have Care Development East ambassadors, like I said, that come in. We have a Meet the Employers Day, so a day at the start of term where all our employers come in and our learners will take their either a personal statement or a CV and give it to the employers. And we hold placement provider recognition events. So at the end of the year, we thank all our placement providers. So they come in and we celebrate our learners and what they've provided for us and supported with us. And in return, we have as well regular events that go on so that our providers can help support us in recruiting our learners for the future. So this is, for example, something that we've got up and coming just after Easter. So our evening with the experts, where we have got professionals from lots of our different placement providers coming in to do an evening for our prospective learners, so year 10s, 11s, to come in and get a feel for the college, see who we work with, and have a little bit more of a kind of hands-on experience of what it's like to study with ourselves and who we work with. So that is like I said, a very kind of brief overview of our experiences. I could talk for a long time about our experiences with different providers. I will obviously answer any questions, but you're more than welcome to take my email address that's at the bottom of the screen and email me if you have got any questions regarding placements or your experiences. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. That was brilliant. Very informative. There was a couple of questions, a couple of similar questions that I can just see on my screen. Who conducts the safeguarding checks? So you do that as a team then, and all the visits and all the monitoring. You do that. So
that is all done by our team. So we have developed with SNEFT and we're in process of developing with all our providers different safeguarding policies and procedures, so that we're all working along the same lines. So yeah, all the safeguarding checks, all the risks assessments, everything like that is done by ourselves.
Okay, and is that on top of a full-time teaching?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Like you said, it's a lot of work, isn't it? Sorry, there's some more questions coming in. Sarah, can you see the questions?
Yep, there's a couple more questions coming in. So the first question is, Lara, obviously, well, this is not a question, this is a statement first of all. Everyone likes the name of your event, the Evening with the Experts. Another question is, Lara, do you still offer other level 3 courses alongside your T-level?
Yes, so we offer a health studies BTEC level 3, a health and social care BTEC. Next academic year, we are developing a healthcare academy. So this is a 1-year program aimed to get learners through and out into some kind of apprenticeship type routes. So yes, we offer a few different routes for health and social care.
Okay, so lots of opportunity for sort of students to sort of get into that profession. But for your T-levels, what sort of numbers are you dealing with at the moment to sort of allow you to find industry placement?
So at the moment, we've got a small, initially our first cohort has been quite small. So we've got 9 learners. And then we have planned next year for a target of 20 learners for our health programme and 20 learners for our science programme.
Excellent. And a couple more, like you say, questions. Do you have an agreement form with employers, students and parents that you get them to sign before the start of the programme?
Yes, so we have obviously we've got our agreement form that we've signed with the hospital. We then have basically our students apply for that work experience. So we set out in that application what would be expected of them, their working hours, like things like dress, what to do if they're absent, what to do in terms of registering and checking in every day. That agreement is then signed by ourselves, it's signed by parents, and it's signed by the employer.
Okay, perfect. One final question. Is your healthcare academy going to have a transition programme embedded into it?
So our healthcare academy is going to be separate from our transition programme. So for ourselves, because of the type of students that we have a massive cohort of students that go into social care, and through the T-level health programme, we felt that didn't address the needs of social care. So we have developed this healthcare academy in the view that this is going to provide a social care option for our learners. And whilst we have got the BTEC, that's fantastic, but obviously if that's defunded and if there is no social care option, we want to have that option ready for our learners to engage with.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Lara. That's really informative. There are some other questions that have come through, but what we'll do is after the event, we'll get Lara to post some of the answers to the questions.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. And yeah, people have got Lara's email address, and anything that we haven't addressed in the chat, we'll follow up. So thanks so much, Lara. That's been brilliant for the providers to listen to. So thank you very much for your time. And yes, see you. So I can't actually see you, but see you soon. So now we will pass on to Alex Charlesworth, who is the AOC's part of the AOC's industry placement team. So we'll pass on to him again. Any questions in the chat? Because there's so many people, I can't see if anybody's got their hands up or anything. So yeah, please put anything that you want in the chat. and I think there was a question about some engineers, but I don't think that's maybe one for Lara, but we'll come back to that. We can have a chat about that before you finish. So Alex, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Laura. Some fantastic points there. I think we can all agree. Some really, really insightful things that you had mentioned there. So as mentioned, my name's Alex Charlesworth. I work on the AOC industry placement team, advising Wave 1, Wave 2 and Wave 3 providers in relation to their industry placement deliveries. So prior to starting the role, I was a work experience and industry placement coordinator for just over 7 years, and I did work at a Wave 2 provider overseeing the on-site construction and building services engineering industry placements. So we did actually have 116 students on our first cohort across those two pathways. So it is quite doable. I know somebody mentioned having over 100 students, but it's a bit of a challenge. But I'm going to talk about the 4 key areas of your industry placement delivery, which is the enrollment stage, the pre-placement stage, the on-placement stage, and the post-placement stage. So having worked with a lot of the Wave 1, Wave 2, and Wave 3 providers, we've picked up some top tips and some key things that we feel we'd like to talk about today for all of the Wave 5 providers to consider moving forward. So I'll start with the enrollment stage. So at this moment in time, students may be attending interviews for the T-level courses that will be starting in September in the new academic year. Now, whoever takes charge of that interview process does need to pass on some information to the person who will be ultimately overseeing industry placements. So I know Laura mentioned that her curriculum team were overseeing it, but we would recommend that having an industry placement coordinator in place to oversee that would be fantastic. So for the purpose of this conversation, if that information was passed on to the industry placement coordinator, we would recommend that that person contact every single student who has had an interview to really just have a conversation around industry placements, what an industry placement looks like, potentially have a conversation with the parents as well about what an industry placement looks like, to talk about the requirements, to talk about the total number of hours that a student must complete, and also talk about the delivery approaches of what you can use in certain different aspects and certain ways that you can do an industry placement. And often what you'll find is as well, that at this stage, it's not what you know, it's who you know. There may be a lot of students who do have a contact within their designated pathway. So again, I'll talk from a construction perspective. If I were to be speaking to a student who is going to be enrolled onto a building services engineering course with the occupational specialism of electrotechnical, let's say, they may have a family member, they may have someone within the family who is a registered electrician, who may be able to support them with an industry placement. So we have picked up around about 20 to 30% of placements by simply speaking to the students prior to them starting the course. So it's a really good way of understanding what relationships are already in place. And also Laura talked about open evenings and inviting students and parents into the provider setting and having a conversation with them. That can be to ask any questions at all about industry placements, to look at when you're looking to plan your industry placements, anything that the parents have any concerns around, whether there's any extra responsibilities that the student may have, whether they're a young carer, kind of understanding all of the basics prior to them starting the course. That then allows you to really make an informed judgment of that student prior to them actually starting the course, and it really helps your delivery. So as much information as you can get from the students and their parents prior to them starting the course is a big, big win for you. And ultimately that moves on to the overall curriculum planning and timing of placement. So Richard talked openly about the T-level planner. If you can solidify where your industry placement is going to be over that 2 year of delivery, We all know it can be very hard, and at times we'll take what we can get in relation to industry placements. And at times we are at the mercy of what the employer wants as well. So we can have a strategic plan of where we would like to have our industry placement, but the employers may have something completely different to that. However, if you can solidify where you would like to put your industry placement, that then feeds into the conversations that you're having with students and parents. For example, if you are looking to have your students released on a Monday and Tuesday for a 23-24 week period at the end of the first year, running from around about February to the end of July, you can talk to them about that and some of the things that the students will need to be aware of at that moment in time. If you're looking at doing block placements throughout the summer holidays, again, you can have conversations around that, whether parents are planning to do holidays at that period in time. And there's lots and lots of different things that you can be having conversations around. But if you can put together a little bit of a plan on where you would like your industry placement to fit over the 2 years, it does help with some of those early conversations. And that also leads us on to developing your employer network and developing in that employer engagement. Again, when you're having those initial conversations with employers at the early enrolment stage, and we advise providers to do this before even starting the delivery of T-levels, just to get a feel for what's out there. And I think what we found has worked very well with the Wave 1, Wave 2, and now Wave 3 providers, is they have put an employer network event in around about June or July time, prior to then delivering industry placements, and really having a conversation about the whole package. This is what the 2 years looks like. Don't talk about industry placements at this stage. Just have a conversation and say, there is massive reforms, there is huge changes to the FE sector, and we are now starting to deliver T-levels. We would like to invite you to an employer network event here at the college or school. And we would like to give you a little bit of an insight into what our, curriculum plans and delivery looks like for the next couple of years. And you can have a conversation with them about what T-levels actually are, what T-levels look like, what is the first year, what are the occupational specialisms, what are some of the pressure points throughout the year, such as the employer set projects, the core exams, how you are looking to deliver that. And ultimately, that's a fantastic opportunity to get feedback from employers. It's not getting the buy-in at this moment in time. It's not getting them to say, yes, we will take on industry placements. It's looking at feedback to say, this would work for us. This is how we would like to deliver industry placements. Hypothetically, this is what an industry placement would look like if we were to offer it. They may already be offering industry placements with other providers. And that's a good point to ask as well. Are they working with any of the local providers? Because as we know, these employers may already have a strong relationship with a Wave 1, Wave 2, or Wave 3 provider at this stage. But if you can put that employer networking event to develop that relationship as early on as possible, you will find that it feeds in very nicely to some of the student readiness activities that you will pre-plan for the next stage. So if we move on to the next slide, please. So starting in September or late August, when your students are due to start, there's some things that you could consider to put in place in regards to your student readiness activities. So Laura mentioned that she's included a 6-week program with one of her healthcare employers to really put together some of the key expectations and managing those expectations. So one of the delivery approaches that you can use is 35 hours of student readiness activities. So highlight this during your employer networking event that you would have prior to delivering T-levels, and say, if you cannot offer an industry placement at this moment in time, we are looking to have key guest speakers to come into the college, site visits. From a healthcare perspective, can we have a tour of your hospital? Can we utilize your simulation suite? There's lots and lots of things that employers can also do. And if you can build a really, really strong package of student readiness activities, and it allows the students to get a little bit of a taster, a little bit of a feel for going out on their industry placement prior. And you can look at this in two different stages. You could look at it from a 35-hour student readiness activity perspective, or one of the other delivery approaches is a 105-hour project as well, that some pathways allow. So we used to utilize the Erasmus and the Turin program. So we used to take our construction students out to Seville and Lebrica and Porto to do a construction project. So we did a farm renovation last year, which allowed the students to just come out of their comfort zone to potentially focus on some of those soft skills. As we know, some students will be ready to start their industry placements. A lot of the students at 16, at 17 years old don't have the maturity and the know-how at this moment in time to start their industry placement. So really think about how you can utilize your student readiness package. What activities can you put in place? Can you go to skills shows? Can you go to trade associations? Can you go to meetings? Can you go to networking events? Can you take your students to a variety of different places? And that's ultimately what you want to be thinking about for those early stages of the course. Again, some big things in relation to skills development and assessment. Laura mentioned lots of key things relating to health. You know, the occupational health check, vaccinations, DBS forms. From a construction perspective, we would look at CSCS cards and ECS cards as well. So planning in all of that prior skills development and assessments that a student would need to do. At the moment, the DfE have released an employer support fund that will be lasting for a year, and that's going to really help providers pay for a lot of the costs incurred in setting up those assessments. We do hope that would follow on, and we have had incentives before, so we do hope future incentives will be put in place. But again, it's just something to plan and to think about prior to your students going out on industry placements. Moving forward, you look at your tracking and administration. So a few comments were mentioned about safeguarding and making sure the paperwork is all in place and what tracking software you are going to use. We've seen two different approaches over the last couple of years. We've seen providers use external software systems. I can name a few, such as Grofar and Navigate, who have been used. And the other view has been to use paper-based models. And I think we can collectively agree paper-based models can get a little bit messy. It can be very, very difficult to do. So if you can manage your tracking and administration in a very easy, central way that has input from both the student and yourself as an industry placement coordinator or a curriculum manager overseeing these industry placements, the whole process becomes completely easy. Well, I wouldn't say completely easy, because we all know it's very, very difficult at times to manage the paperwork, but it does become a lot easier. So some key pieces of documentation that you would need at the pre-placement stage is a health and safety check, making sure that you're meeting with your employers, managing expectations, talking about your objectives, talking about the working environments, talking about some of the key job responsibilities that student would have, and putting in some expectations for that as well. We also look at an industry placement agreement that somebody else mentioned and Laura mentioned herself. So that can be used as a little bit of a contract, really, just to say, if you are turning up late, this is our warnings procedure. We used to have a warning procedure of 3 strikes and you're out, really. Stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. And that's how we implemented it in our industry placement agreement booklets. And also put in place a start date and for an induction. You can also talk about delivery approaches with that employer as well, on whether they want to manage it or how they want to manage it, and putting in certain plans and structures in place for your industry placement. So ultimately, at your pre-placement stage, it's just about offering a comprehensive package to make sure that that student is ready. Are they fully aware of what they're expected to do on their industry placement? Have they met their post-employer? Have they had a bit of an induction stage? Have they done some prior activities to get them ready for their industry placement? So moving on to the on-placement stage. So at the on-placement stage, the students will have a clear induction, and that clear induction needs to be done with yourself as well. We always recommend that you're there just to make the process quite easy. So in the first week, if you can be part of the induction process, to marry the two expectations up, try and be there for the student's first day. I know sometimes it's very, very difficult to do that, very, very difficult to do that. But if you're there in person, again, developing that relationship with the employer, as Laura said, goes a long, long way. So if you can help marry that relationship up at the start in relation to the induction, it really does help. And set out some key objectives for the student to work towards within those first couple of weeks. We always put down soft skills. So put down those early objectives as soft skills to work towards: timekeeping, attendance, communication, asking questions, settling them in quite easy. And that highlights our next point of when you're going to do your reviews. So at the induction stage, you could say to the employer, I've put in a date for 6 weeks' time to do a first just check in with yourself, just a little bit of a catch up to see how the student is doing. And I think those reviews have to be done in person. We can get away with doing them over the phone, but again, that relationship building, try and make yourself as present as possible during this industry placement process. There's a huge cultural shift from what we used to do with the old work experience model, which was 1 to 35 hours, where again, a student would go out on placement and they'd pretty much be finished by Friday. You wouldn't get to see much of the employer. If you can try and make yourself as present as possible at these reviews, it really does go a long way. So that first review is just about settling in. How are they getting on? How is that student, adjusting to the industry placement? We always say put a midpoint review, so halfway through the industry placement process. That's going to talk a little bit more about stretching and challenging that student, really making sure that they're fully understanding what their requirements are, ultimately looking at the next steps for the second half of the placement. Any concerns raised at all, any issues from the student or the employer, and ultimately just making sure that they're on track with everything they're doing. Again, from mistakes that we've made, and Laura would have had this before, we've had students, we've got to the midpoint review and there's been a whole host of issues that have arisen. So, it is really, really important to check in with the employer as much as you can. And the final review comes at the end. So really making sure that you're having a good comprehensive review of how that placement went. And this helps create longevity as well. So from an employer perspective, you could say to them, how has it worked? Are there some things that you would do differently? Would you consider taking an industry placement student next year? For that student, are they looking to take that student on for future employment opportunities and XYZ? So those reviews are really, really important. They do bring to light some key issues that do need to be discussed. And that again feeds into the next comment about continuous communication and consistent in-person visits. So we used to put into our diary on a Friday morning for about 2 hours. I know it can be quite difficult if you're teaching, just to call up some of our employers. We blocked it out in the diary every week just to check in, have a 5-minute conversation. How's the student got on this week? Everything okay? All good? Looking forward to the weekend? Fantastic. Doesn't have to be a long conversation. Just check in with that employer as much as you possibly can. And if you put that in your diary, it gives you a little bit of a reminder to do so. And throughout the placement, on placement, try and do a bit of a case study. Try and get as much documentation as you can. Get the student to take photos. Go out to the placement and take photos yourself. If you can, get some stuff on LinkedIn if the employer and the student are happy to do so. Really celebrate that industry placement. Really highlight to other providers what we're doing. Again, that helps with the selling of that package when you come to your enrolment stage for the next year, highlighting pictures and highlighting case studies of what your placements look like. It can be very difficult to do that for the first time because, again, you wouldn't have anything to work from. But building up a strong case study and making sure you're documenting these placements helps with selling it to future employers as well as students. So again, lots and lots of things to think about in terms of case studies and documentation. So moving on to the final point is the post-placement. So we've touched on the end of placement review, but it is really important. As a previous industry placement coordinator, we know that so much work is done prior to the actual industry placement starting. And when that student has started, it's almost a huge breath of fresh air. You can kind of put your feet up a little bit. And if the student gets to the end of the placement without being removed or any issues happening or any concerns being raised, again, that's a second breath of fresh air. You kind of like, thank you so much, they've got to the end. And not a lot of work is done at the end of the placement. You think they've got there, they've made it, they've done it, brilliant. But that end of placement review is so important to do, and really making sure you're highlighting and closing the loop really with that industry placement journey, especially with the employer, and developing those relationships and helping them make their mind up about offering future industry placements in the next academic year or with your current cohort. Get the student to write a written thank you from the provider and from the student, just to make them feel special and to make them feel that that journey has been worthwhile, to really put a personal touch on that. Discuss further opportunities, look at what is available in terms of apprenticeships, next steps, links with local universities. Again, Laura mentioned this, host an end of year celebrating success event, really making sure you're celebrating those employees that have gone the extra mile for your students, bringing them into the provider setting, making them feel part of the family, giving them an opportunity to see other students who, you know, or other industry placement journeys, to give an overview of what they've done, what other employers have done, highlighting best practice examples of what other employers have done. Bringing that together is a really, really good example of how to create that relationship or that lasting relationship with employers. And again, finally, document the industry placements, put case studies together, celebrate some of the students that have gone that extra mile on their industry placements, and showcase that at your future events. So that's myself. There's lots of things that we could have spoke about, but these are some of the key things to think about when delivering your industry placements. And I wish you all the best for the future.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Alex, for some really great considerations there. I'm slightly aware that we're running behind time. There is a question in the chat about how they could use Turing for industry placements. Would you be able to answer that in the chat, please?
No problem.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much, Alex. And I think that was the only question, Sarah, wasn't it? But we'll come back to any questions at the end. I could only see the Turing one. So yes, we'll move on, and I'd like to introduce you to Rachel Doherty from St Modwyn Homes. So Rachel, are you here?
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Yes, you're very welcome. And Rachel is going to talk to us from an employer's point of view. So we're looking forward to that.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for inviting me. My name is Rachel Doherty. I'm the Early Careers Advisor for St Modwyn Homes. We're a medium-sized house builder and support T-levels in design surveying pathway. So just to give you a little bit of context, I've got 5 steps for successful employer partnerships that I'd just like to run through with you, if that's okay. Next slide, please, Steve. And next slide again. Now, this isn't death by PowerPoint. What I'm going to do is literally just run through more of a really personal approach. And again, want to back up a lot of things that Laura and Alex have confirmed. And the impression that I've got is that there's plenty of opportunity for you as providers to engage with us as employers. And by taking what Laura said and what Alex has said, and hopefully a little bit of my hints and tips as well, it will really help you to have successful employer partnerships, which is really what we need to be doing all the way through this. So next slide, please, Steve. The first point is about attraction. So how do you start the process? How do you find the employers? And I guess it's like, what's in it for both parties? For me as an employer, it's about future-proofing. It's about upskilling the workforce that we've got. And it's about feeding directly into my early careers talent pool. We need to make sure that we're relying on applications from a variety of different means. And T-levels is certainly a key driver for me as an employer into that talent pool. Now, obviously finding placements for T-levels is important for you, but also think about upskilling your staff, about your industry practices, things like modern methods of construction. We're the people that are on the ground that are doing that. And it's a real way of you being able to increase the upskilling of your actual staff. So how do you attract the right employers? It needs to be the right employer for your T-level. So all of the things that Alex and Laura were saying about your open day events, the social media campaigns, networking events, really need to be started early and really need to be there as a link between what you're doing and what you want. Lots of employers are going to want to get involved from a social value perspective, but it is about addressing their specific need. Don't think the only way you're going to get placement is by trying to attract the big names. Yes, you could get a JLR and you could cover off your manufacturing and your T-level, etc., etc., etc. But you don't need those big names. The small employer around the corner may just be as helpful to you. So don't just go in there looking for those big names. We've got just over 400 staff and we're supporting 5 T-levels. So, and hopefully next year even more. But they're all within the one T-level pathway. We're not going to be able to provide T-level support in areas that we don't cover. So be mindful of that. My background's recruitment, and we would always say that in order to get one interview, you're probably going to be looking at about 50 CVs. That's what you need to think. If you're going to be looking at about 20 students on placement, you're going to need about 100 different contacts of employers, because it might not be right for them right now, but you need to think of it from an immediacy and a keep warm. So it's about keeping those engagements all the way through, regardless of whether they can do a placement now. But it might be something in 12 months' time. It might be something in 2 years' time. And you need to really make sure that you're harnessing those relationships. You need to have a really strategic approach to that. And the kind of hot and not least, yes, attract those employers that are keen, but also bear in mind the way that you're communicating with the employers. Colleges email me all the time. I'm visible on LinkedIn, and I try to get lots and lots of engagement, but I'll speak to some and I won't speak to others. So what's differential? Colleges that keep their comms specific to me and relevant, I will speak to. If I can see the features and the benefits as to why I should speak to that college, I will speak to them. It's a little bit about what's in it for me, but I won't speak to colleges if they're not in my geographical area, if I don't have sites that are live and active in that area, or if they haven't got a construction campus. So don't waste your time by contacting just as a blanket approach. Have a really targeted attraction. Next slide, please, Steve. And this is all about engagement. So, okay, you've got your colleges, you've got an idea of who you want. How do you engage them? What do you need to do? Those first initial meetings are where you set out your stall, and it is absolutely vital at those meetings that everybody is open and honest, and there is a level of transparency. This is where your successful partnerships are born. And they could be face-to-face, they could be online, but they need to be informative and they need to be honest. Employers 100% need to understand the commitment. We do not come from an education background. We do not know what 315 hours looks and feels like. If you say to us it's 6 months, we've got a better idea of that. And it's a little bit about taking away the jargon from within an education environment. I don't come from education. And certainly in my initial conversations with my providers, I wanted to strip it back. Okay, what does that look like? What does that feel like for me? I've recently needed to step in to pick up a placement for a student that's on the design and surveying pathway, because another employer, a huge construction company, had put the student on a development, and that development actually ended in December. Now, he's 17 years old, he doesn't drive, and the employer thought it was the right thing to do to offer him another location, which was 40 miles away, with no consideration. How's he going to get there? How's he going to get there for the start time? He's got 180 hours still to complete. So I've had to step in to help him do that. Now I'm happy to do that because of my relationship with the training provider. So building those relationships can help you out. But ultimately, had that employer been a little bit more had a little bit more forethought, they'd have realised that the placement can't end in December. It has to be for at least another 180 hours. And that's really difficult, very, very difficult. If we don't understand the commitment, how are we going to agree to support? Next slide, please, Steve. Okay, so you've got your employer. They're on board initially. You're having those initial conversations. So how do you work together to get what's best? It's about timely communication. Companies and education providers are very, very different. Think of diaries, for example. Education providers work September through to July. Businesses work January to December. So the question to ask your business partners is, when would it work for you? Because whilst it might work, you might have in your mind that this is going to be absolutely perfect to start it in November. For example, with house building, November, December is our end of year. We are head down, bums up, and we are trying to complete those houses because we have to build those houses. We have to complete them and people have to move in them because that's where our money comes from. So with all due respect, we don't want T-level starting in November, December. They're not going to get the best experience. It's not the right time. But you're not going to know that unless you ask those questions. So those are really, really key. When would it work for you? Share the curriculum as well with your employers, because they may naturally gravitate towards part of that curriculum, but they might need guidance on where that they can support with other elements. You know, most have got absolutely no experience of working to a curriculum. It's been many, many years since a lot of them have been within education or even, even sat an exam. They're not used to T-levels, so educate them and make them your next ambassadors and make them advocates for T-levels. Because once you've got one person in a company, like myself, that's now comes and does events for AOC, because I'm passionate about T-levels and I'm now an advocate for other businesses. Do things like the employer events that the others have mentioned. It's really, really important. You know, as I've said to you before, prior to this role, I worked in recruitment, and part of my job was to cover immediate bookings. So think from your perspective, if you called an agency for a teacher or a supply teacher, you'd want them now, not next week. Yet the word immediate differs to lots of people. Be mindful that this is not what pays the bills for companies. These are the nice to-dos, not the need to-dos. So we need planning, we need it in advance, and it needs to work around our timetables. But getting employers to attend events in the future, as that first initial contact with you builds that momentum. And that's really key, because if they can see you as a provider and see your students and your students' parents at those events, it's a win-win, because it starts that engagement really early and it drives that want and need to actually support you in your placements. You know, if my children wanted to do a T-level, I would want to meet some of the potential employer partners before they enrolled on it. It makes up a huge part of the qualification. So a question that I'd pose to you is, do you, as training providers, have those relationships set up before you're going to get your students? Because you need a handful of them to be your shop window. You need a handful of them to be able to speak to those parents of students, to allay those fears. Now, one of my T-level students from last year has already secured an unconditional offer for a degree apprenticeship. It works. It really works. And having those T-level, having those success stories through your case studies will help you in the future. Next slide, please, Steve. It's about retention. So how do you keep that employer engaged and build on the opportunities? Employers should be an extension of your own brand. College partners should be an extension of the company's brand. Are your values aligned? Are you both passionate about developing young people and future-proofing and upskilling? So the company doesn't need to be multi-million pound FTSE 100 to be able to offer an impactful T-level placement. All they need to be able to do is show a commitment to your students, an understanding of what they need to do, and be able to have a practical application and put that classroom experience to help. And let's not underestimate that companies at the moment are all considering whether or not they're recruiting in certain areas. So having a 315-hour work interview as this placement is really, really attractive. There's no money handed over in salaries. It's a really great way to try before you buy. I visit my T-level students when they're on site and I try and involve them. We had an all-hands event and both of those T-level students came with me to that all-hands and then met our CEO. We try and involve them in everything we can. We give them their own uniform, they've got their own laptop, they've got their own email address, and we even offer a bursary that will cover the costs of their travel to and from. We want them to feel like they're employed, because if they feel like they're employed at the end of that T-level placement, they are going to apply for our apprenticeships, and we want them to apply for our apprenticeships. You know, their drive to deliver is really high. They all ask the right questions. They all know what they want. And it's really key to involve them in that process. What I would say is that I'm fortunate in that I can support 5 T-levels and cover off the majority of the learning on their curriculum. And I do that by offering them a 20-week placement, and they're in their first year, and then they come back in their second year and do a month-long placement. That works for us because we've developed that with our providers. During that time, we'll also get them to move location. So they'll be on their main site, but they'll also come to our head office where they'll learn technical and they'll learn the planning. But I've noticed on some of the other T-levels, for example, kind of hairdressing, barbering and beauty therapy, you may not find one employer that can cover all 3 elements of that T-level. So find 3. You might need 3 separate employers. It's absolutely fine. But keep those 3 employers involved with each other, because that will help as well. It needs to be a partnership. I'm on an employer partner. I'm an employer partner with my T-level providers, and we meet bi-monthly and we discuss and we learn and we change the way that we approach it if it's needed changing. but all of those employers are all in those meetings, and that's really key as well. What I would say is, if I've travelled 2.5 hours to go to a meeting, I'd quite like some nice biscuits. I'd quite like a cup of coffee. I'd quite like maybe even lunch. I'm an employer. You would be gobsmacked the amount of times I've been at meetings with colleges and not been offered a cuppa. Now, we are the corporate face, and we are the people that are going to make your T-levels successful. So just remember that. Be open-minded as to when you need to do your placements. A lot's been mentioned about placements during school holidays, etc. That doesn't work for me personally. But again, that can be a solution as well. So be fluid, and just because you do a T-level which offers a block placement for one student with one employer, you may need to be flexible and offer multiple different pathways, multiple different solutions to how you find your 315-hour minimum. Next slide, please, Steve. And this is the final slide. So it's about breaking the barriers. So what are the barriers to the placement from both a college and an employer perspective? It's experience. I know from speaking to my colleges, many of the people who look after T-levels are doing so as an addition to their regular job, and Lara's confirmed that as well. If you want to scale this, is this the right approach? You need someone that can hit those phones, that can go out there and find those placements. And whilst you've all got established links through your work placements and industry placements historically, don't just rely on those. It needs to be proactively pushing, asking your students, even setting up incentives, etc. I've seen that happen with other providers, that a £20 Amazon voucher to a student that can find an employer that would be happy for a conversation, etc. These are ways of just driving that engagement. You know, employers may be reluctant to give it, so you've got to sell it. You've got to really sell it. You know, ultimately, the biggest sell with the T-level is it's a 315-hour job interview, and the T-level is a student is unpaid, but the T-level student is really keen. They want to learn, and they do. They don't just sit there and watch. They're physically doing. And I'm a real advocate. And I think once you find employers out there that can be those advocates for you, then it's word of mouth. Good luck. Next slide, please, Steve. Good luck, and it will get easier in year 2.
Thank you, Rachel. That was excellent. Yeah, I'm just wondering what sort of biscuits you would expect when you went to a provider. Sarah, are there any questions in the chat?
Not at the moment. Just some thanks coming through for Rachel for being very informative.
Yes,